So we're going to kick off today with our industry deep dives, covering 3 amazing fireside chats with industry leaders, covering financial services, retail, and the software as a service industry. So we're going to dig into what's disrupting, what's innovating in those industries. Let's dive into what's front of mind now in the retail industry and explore how technology and innovation are creating opportunities across that industry. So I'd like to welcome Mark Wolfenden, Director of Countdown X. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Paul. Great to see you.
Same here, mate. Mark, maybe you want to share a little bit around your experience in the retail industry and a little bit around your career?
Yeah, definitely. I've always been retail and consumer. So I started off in strategy consultancy, but actually focused specifically in that area. And that was what really got me excited about how dynamic an industry it was, how heavily competitive it was, and how it had to be incredibly customer focused to actually win.
Yep.
So that then took me into Sainsbury's in the UK, came across into New Zealand just about 7 years ago now. Originally came for 18 months, but actually never left. It's a pretty beautiful place here. And spent some time in Warehouse Group, My Food Bag, and then moved over to Countdown.
Fantastic. Some great retail and grocery experience there, clearly. Mark, I maybe just want to kick things off and talk a little bit around, let's look to the future, like the future state of retail and grocery, and what trajectory is that taking? And maybe if you could share your thoughts in that space.
Definitely. It's a fascinating space and heavily led by consumer trends, of course. The most obvious one being e-commerce, which has been around for a little while, but is continuing to accelerate. And we've seen that recently through the pandemic, I think, of sort of us taking probably 5 steps ahead in the sort of future of retail. But customers are definitely picking the way they want to interact with retailers. And it's quite different depending on which category you're operating in as well. But if you look 10 years in the future, we're probably looking in certain categories of sort of 30% of total retail sales being online, even in the likes of grocery, but right up to maybe 70, 80% in some of the electronics categories. So a huge step change in the different channels that are being interacted with. But actually what's almost more interesting is that the slightly less visible behavior of customers who are sort of researching using digital channels, but then actually going into store and purchasing is probably growing even faster, but it's not always as visible. So it doesn't always get as much focus. So that omni-channel behavior of the way that the customers are engaging with digital channels in retailers and then engaging with the physical environment is one that I think is going to be even more important in the future. And then what that actually means for retailers is really fascinating, because it means potentially a complete change in your network strategy and your physical locations, what the role of the store is, and actually why customers should come into your store. So is it about a better experience? Is it to actually pick up products that have already been ordered? Is it actually to help fulfill online orders and e-commerce? And so a really interesting space. I think you've already seen it accelerate in areas like electronics that have been probably a little bit further ahead of the times, and the stores becoming much more around customer service, pickup, and actually a lot more transactions often happening online. So a really interesting space. I think the other implication of the e-commerce growth for retailers is the need for profitability.
Yeah.
And obviously e-commerce is often a profit dilutive channel, but it's obviously where our customers are going. So we don't really have an option. But that does mean that we've got to look at ways to make e-commerce more efficient, more productive, more profitable, but also means that we might, as retailers, need to look to wider value pools to actually get the profit or to continue to grow. So ecosystem strategies have become really important for retailers as well, and looking beyond just the core customer proposition of what you sell today. How do you lock in customer loyalty to grow lifetime value through engaging with other products or services or adjacent offers? And then how do you tie that all together in a really effective way with loyalty and with data and personalization to curate that experience for customers? But then also, how do you leverage that ecosystem and the customer to identify other ways of commercializing, so whether that's commercializing supply chains or looking at other opportunities like retail media and growing media opportunities. So I think increasingly we'll see ecosystems evolving within the retail landscape, and we've already seen that in a lot of the big grocery retailers internationally, the likes of Walmart and Tesco, and then even locally, probably the most obvious example being the Warehouse Group, who've got multi-brands who are growing retail media, who are actually launched a marketplace and a platform business, and so some fascinating trends. I don't know if anybody exactly knows where retail's going, but I think lots of really interesting challenges to face into.
Great insight there. Maybe if we just move a little bit more into the impact of technology specifically on retail, in terms of how technology is helping retailers and scale and adapt more quickly to the environment. Have you got some thoughts around that?
Yeah, great. I mean, I think probably the most recent example is obviously the pandemic.
Yeah.
And working at Countdown through the pandemic, quite a privilege to be a part of an industry that was still absolutely vital and even more vital in just getting food on people's tables, but incredibly challenging at the same time, and all of our customers actually shifting dramatically to different ways of shopping much faster than they have done before. So technology was central to how we responded to that, but also actually it shone a light on some of the challenges that we had from a stability and scalability perspective, and really identified areas that we need to focus on more in the future, like resolving technical debt and making sure that we had the resilience and the operational visibility on our technology to respond. It did also show the benefit of having product teams that were working in an agile model, because we actually completely pivoted a lot of the roadmaps and things that were really important pre-pandemic suddenly became completely useless
overnight.
And exactly, and customer needs completely changed, and it actually went from a problem of how do we drive growth and how do we make sure that we can meet that growth, to how do we actually manage sales and almost restrict growth. And so we were pivoting to looking at how do you enable functionality like customers to cancel their own orders or move their order. How do we enable us to prioritize vulnerable customer groups? And so actually it also demonstrated, I think, the amazing benefit of having clarity of focus for our product teams, and that closeness and understanding around customer needs helped us to respond much more quickly. So that was probably a really recent example. Beyond that, I think data analytics is an obvious example as well, around the role that advanced data can play in helping to scale and helping to understand and pivot the direction of the business. And in retail, it's absolutely integral to not just making decisions in terms of product ranging, pricing, channel selection, supply chain, demand management, but also around there managing the customer interaction and loyalty, and the ability to be more real time in terms of those customer interactions, and the need to holistically understand customers. And so some of the modern technology and first party data around actually having a customer data platform that's interacting with all of your channels in real time, understanding exactly where the customer is, how they're engaging with the organization, having a single view of customer is what's going to be really critical to enable the more challenging growth and profit opportunities in the future, I think.
Yeah.
One other area actually as well, and I touched on it before, around profitability and efficiency, is the role technology needs to play in enabling that through automation, and that's both through supply chain and logistics, as well as automation and efficiency in the way that we manage the business. So.
Yeah, fantastic. I'd like to just kind of have a bit of a discussion around innovation a little bit, and what can sort of retail and grocery learn from other industries, or what have you sort of seen that they have learned so far and brought into the industry?
Yeah, interesting. I think for any innovation, it's really important to look outside of the industry you're operating in, and it is all about customer need and the problem that you're trying to solve. So probably rather than sort of holistic industries, I might share some examples, I think, of where we can or have learned within retail. I think one, and I touched on it before, the importance of the physical and digital interaction and the more cross-channel customer behaviour. One of the real standouts for me is actually Air New Zealand and the way that they've completely revolutionised the check-in experience, and how they've interacted as both with your mobile phone as you're checking in, but then the way that that experience blends into when you arrive at the airport and interact with kiosks, and then actually the physical environment and design of that physical environment that enables the best check-in process at the fastest time. And I recently went back to the UK actually and was traveling on Emirates, and a beautiful, beautiful flight, great airline, but I had to actually stand in the queue again of sort of hundreds of people snaking around to check in, and it frustrated me because I'd actually, as a customer, got used to that completely different experience that Air New Zealand had brought to market. And so I thought that was an awesome example, and one that I think retail can learn from, around how do you think about your designing your physical environment and your digital environment to get something that's better than the sum of its parts. One of the other areas that I think retail needs to really learn from is subscription, and we've got it'll be really interesting to hear the SaaS subscription talk as well, because I think retailers historically have been incredibly transactional in terms of the understanding of the business and the way that we manage retail businesses, and probably historic around that sort of trader mentality of you're after the sale, you're looking at how many units did we sell in one particular category, or how many of product A or B is sold, and then how do we drive a product or a category, and the need for us to take the understanding back to the customer, and how do we drive loyalty and lifetime value, and how do we understand what even drives that or enables customer choice. And so I think there's a whole transformation we need in a lot of retailers to actually evolve our understanding of how we manage the business around customer as opposed to around product and transaction. And probably the final example I'd give is from other pure digital businesses. So the likes of Spotify, Netflix, all of these apps that we all have in our pocket and use every day, and the influence that has on our expectation for relevance and personalization, and that directly translates to your expectations when you then go onto a retail site, and they show you a whole load of products you're completely uninterested in, maybe baby products when you don't have a child, or we've all been there. Or as a retailer, you look at a product on Amazon and then get chased around all websites and social media for days, but you've actually already bought that product in store. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to look to some of the best in the industry to provide relevance, but then also discovery of new product, but relevant discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess if we can just have a discussion around the customer as well. Again, really, it's, how has that customer interaction model and customer interfaces changed in terms of from a technology? How has technology impacted that in retail at the moment, and how does that impact on consumer behaviour?
Interesting. There's probably a number of areas again, and I've probably touched on a few of them already, but I think one key element around customer expectations that's dramatically changed is around convenience and speed. And the example earlier that Francis shared around Uber, and how Uber has transformed customer expectations around I can get my mobile out and actually have a taxi waiting for me in 3 minutes, and I start to get annoyed if it's 7 minutes to wait, versus where I used to have to call up a cab and had to wait 30 minutes or an hour for a taxi. And again, how that then translates to your expectations of immediacy for actually accessing product. So how do I, within food as well, Uber Eats is probably a good example of expecting to order food for now and get it delivered to you. So I think the interaction model for customers from a convenience perspective is really going to change, and the need for technology to support that end-to-end to make sure that not only can you place that order, but then you can also track it, and you can actually enable the supply chain to be dynamic enough, and the often sort of the marketplace of supply as well, which is often involved in making sure there's a delivery driver who's able to pick it up, who can drop it off to you, and provide a great experience end to end. The other area, I think, is how digital plays a role in the physical environment and the in-store environment. And we've seen the examples of Amazon checkoutless shops, and how you can just walk in and have completely frictionless experience. So, I think that will continue to evolve. And as retailers try to find new ways to encourage customers into their physical locations and stores that they've invested a huge amount in, I think there'll be more of a fight for the customer in the in-store environment where technology and digital will have to play a role.
Play a role together.
And we probably haven't even seen that advance anywhere near as much as we've seen e-commerce advance to date, I think.
Yeah, I think you talked about the Amazon experience, and I know that's kind of the here and now, but I think for many retailers, that technology isn't available to them yet.
Exactly.
What about, what's it really going to take for a retailer to be successful in the future, in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What's your sort of view from that perspective?
I mean, I think it's going to be a lot about the core capabilities that a retailer is going to need to build, and the muscles that will need to build. So that's not only about the core technology, and often retailers still have a lot of core legacy systems that are not enabled to be as agile and adaptable as perhaps some of the new innovative pure plays or startups that are coming to market and then disrupting a lot of legacy retail. But it's also about the way that we set ourselves up as a business and the capabilities that we have. And often retail is still set up around quite siloed teams, and in large retailers often still in quite a traditional operating model of sort of top-down leadership, relatively hierarchical, quite old school ways sometimes of actually running the business. And the importance of bringing the right capabilities around customer problems is going to be really critical so that we can be adaptive and flexible. So it's not going to be good enough in the future to have a marketing team over in one side of the building and a technology team in another side and the data and analytics team off providing some reporting. It's got to be all those capabilities coming together, because the touch points with the customer and how we talk to the customer will need to be informed by the analytics and the understanding of the customer and the technology that actually enables us to be successful and to create the customer experiences end to end, not to mention the actual product and ranging decisions that are relevant for different customer groups. So I think we're going to see retailers shift in terms of their operating model, leadership behaviors, and I think actually have to learn a lot from pure product companies around the ability to bring more agile ways of working to life, but to make that work in a retail environment and probably make some changes. But bringing all of those cross-functional capabilities together, I think, is going to be critical.
I think it's an exciting time in retail and a lot to look forward to for sure. So, Mark, I really want to thank you for joining us today. Some fantastic insight from you in terms of what's going on in retail and grocery, and much appreciated.
Thanks very much for having me. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you.